I'm Boris from Line. We're here at Devconnect, which is, of course, Ethereum focused. It's the Ethereum World Fair. But we have a fun interview today with Sylvie and Adam from Atomiq Labs. We got some Bitcoin folk because they are building some very, very cool tech working on trustless cross-chain swaps secured by Bitcoin. I have interviewed them before on a Line guest stream, but we're doing a little follow-up today, hearing what's new, going over what they're building. So Adam, Sylvie, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, awesome to be here.
Thanks a lot for having us again, Boris.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Tell me about Atomiq Labs and what you guys are building.
So yeah, Atomiq is fully trustless swaps right now between Bitcoin and other chains, but we're secured by Bitcoin, zero slippage, so we have fixed pricing, you know exactly. What you see is what you get. The next iteration of Atomiq, which we call Atomiq 2.0 internally, is any chain to any chain swaps, cross-chain, that are secured by Bitcoin and also zero slippage.
Okay, cool. So I think people are familiar with the idea of interoperability between blockchains and swap and bridging. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you think of interop today? And is it a problem? I mean, I have my own answer, but I want to hear your take.
Yeah, I think saying that people are familiar with that's not true. I mean, it's every person I talk to, like also during the conference about like any kind of cross-chain stuff, and kind of get into this like details, and I kind of explain to them that how it works now. It's literally like trusting some multisigs or validators or whatever. They're kind of like surprised that this is the way it's done. They kind of expected that there would be some kind of final settlement, which would be then handled somehow trustlessly.
Like some final source of truth?
Exactly, something like that. But in the end, it turns out for most of the interop now, this is simply not in place. And I don't think many people know that.
Yeah, and in addition to that, in my opinion, 95% of people actually don't know when they're using a bridge or a cross-chain swap service what the underlying trust assumptions are.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we need to do a better job with that in terms of educating people. Also, when we want to like onboard mass market, this stuff needs to become so much more easy to use.
Yeah, that's kind of the point, right? It also like needs to be very easy for people to switch, right? Because right now, if you have a difference between, you're gonna do it the DeFi route, right? And you're gonna need to wait, 5-10 minutes for that to work. Or on the other hand, you have solutions like Relay, which are completely centralized, but process the swap in seconds. Yeah, it's kind of like, kind of don't know better, right? Like Relay is fast, it works, and nice.
Yeah, I've used it, it works, but there's
like,
some trust assumptions that are made that maybe it's
me, bro.
It's like literally you are sending your assets to an EOA of someone, right? And then you're expecting them to send you the funds back, right? And thing is, the alternatives are not really great. So we also think like, it's quite important to have something that's as close to that as possible. And I think we should theoretically be able to get there with our tech and with trust assumptions that are much better, right? Now your difference is between, you either use something centralized and you wait 10 seconds to do a swap, or you do something decentralized and trustless where it takes maybe 15, maybe 20 seconds. Now it's not that big of a difference. And now you kind of, think about that if you do that. Like, is it really worth it for me to not wait 5 to 10 more seconds and, get this trust assumption of that other party being able to just rug me? Well, then it's a different story like now, right?
Yeah, and I just also believe that like the mass market user of the future, they won't care if something is decentralized or centralized. So now is the time to build the best decentralized and trustless systems, because then they have no other option to use, because the market is then taken over by decentralized systems.
I want to say I do think about this quite a bit, and I agree. The end user, the average person who hopefully all the crypto stuff is abstracted away for them eventually, they don't care. They just want a good product that works until there's a hack and they lose their money. And then they really, really care. And of course, we want to avoid that.
It's kind of like how I become to think about that is like, yes, these mass market users, they will not really care. But the solution, the wallet, let's say, that they use, they're gonna care, right? Because if some of these bridges is gonna, freeze assets or, confiscate assets, then it's kind of on the company that runs the wallet, right?
Yep.
So maybe
whoever owns the user relationship.
Yes. So maybe they should have like a bit of incentive to actually use a solution which can be evil, right? So at
makes
least
sense.
Hope so.
I think we understand the problem that exists here, right? We need different blockchains with different architectures, different types of assets to be able to interoperate with each other, because of course users or protocols want to be able to move assets between chains. Bitcoin is the largest and the first blockchain. It's where it all started. There's a tremendous amount of value there.
It's also the most secure.
It's also okay. Some people may argue with you about that, but we can get into some spicy topics later. And I don't have the arguments myself to get into that. But
no, it's like the thing is like we use Bitcoin network for what it is good for, right? That it's like immutable ledger, it's decentralized, it's super easy to verify, and that these are like three very important points for us, where we want to use Bitcoin as a basically the settlement layer of all the cross-chain swaps, right? We could in theory do it with Ethereum. The problem there is that, first of all, it's quite hard to verify with like Ethereum consensus, right? Like you can do some kind of light client proof, but that's still like most of the time it's just a sync committee proof, which is like, you know, a simplified version of a light client even. So that even doesn't provide you the full Ethereum consensus security. And on the other side, you have Bitcoin, which is literally like proof of work. It's so easy to verify. It's like you just take this data, block header, you hash it twice with SHA-256, which is supported on all the blockchains in existence today, and you just check if this hash is like lower than some threshold. That's literally what proof of work is. And it makes it super easy to verify this consensus of Bitcoin on any other chain. And you don't even need to use any crazy ZK magic for that. And what that means is that literally anyone can contribute and actually sync up this, what we call a light client or consensus client, right? You don't need to run some crazy computation, do some crazy ZK proving on servers, which you don't own, right? You're fully self-sovereign with this system.
Okay.
Real cypherpunk.
Real cypherpunk, which I fully support. So let's move on. You've hinted at a lot of things. Maybe this is a good time to explain your solution and how it works at whatever technical depth you want to go. We can start high and then we'll see how deep we need to go. But yeah, we set the stage. How does Atomiq work?
So maybe I'll start with that and I'll give you like an easier overview. So the idea behind it is basically like a little safe or vault, for example, on Ethereum, where you lock up the Ethereum funds, and then we run this Bitcoin Lite client on Ethereum, for example. It saves all the Bitcoin block headers onto Ethereum, and then visually speaking, the counterparty, in this case, like the market maker, can unlock access to the Ethereum vault with a successful Bitcoin transaction. So you're basically using the Bitcoin transaction as a key to unlock the vault.
I like that analogy. So basically, say we have somebody who wants to swap Bitcoin for Ethereum. There's Ethereum on Ethereum L1. There's Bitcoin on Bitcoin. How the swap can happen is a Bitcoin transaction acts like a key, releasing the Ethereum funds to someone else, and then releasing Bitcoin to the person who wants to get the Bitcoin.
Actually, funnily enough, the Bitcoin side, there is actually no one releasing anything.
Okay.
It's literally on the Bitcoin side. It's the beauty of the system. You just have one single transaction on the Bitcoin side. You literally just send directly to the counterparty on the Bitcoin side, because on Bitcoin you cannot have a lot of expressivity when it comes to programmability there. So we just do a simple transfer there, right? And then all the more expressive stuff is handled on the side of Ethereum. Because Ethereum can check, okay, I have this block header, so now in this block there was this Bitcoin transaction actually mined, and I can prove it, and I do that, and now I can actually get the funds from this vault or escrow, right?
I see. Okay. Yeah, and of course, Bitcoin uses a UTXO model, so it's a little different for Ethereum people who are watching. There's some different ways to look at it, but of course there's Ethereum projects using UTXOs like Aztec, for example, I think. Other privacy-related projects, but
exactly for privacy, like UTXO model is quite good. Yeah, right. Like it's also like in Bitcoin world we have Liquid sidechain, right? And that's been around since 2018, I think. They already have like confidential transfers and confidential assets there, and it just makes it so easy if you have a UTXO chain to do this, right? So it kind of makes sense that now there is like going back to the roots from the Ethereum community, which wants to get privacy to kind of leverage this UTXO model. But I think we just went off a
little bit. Yeah, we digressed a little. We can bring it back.
Let's circle back.
So we gave this Ethereum example just to help people understand. Right now, you're not doing swaps between Bitcoin and Ethereum, though, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yes. I mean, we do between Bitcoin and EVM. Not necessarily the Ethereum main chain, right? We are live on Borcany, which is an EVM sidechain to Bitcoin, and we plan to go live in all of these roll-up, which leverage BitVM bridge. So BitVM bridging is basically a way how you can have a trust minimized representation of Bitcoin in other systems. What most of these guys do, they have a roll-up, like regular ZK rollup, as you're familiar with it from the Ethereum world, simply just using Bitcoin as a settlement layer and also as a data availability layer. And then they build this trust minimized bridge to have a representation of Bitcoin in this rollup, let's
Okay.
say, right? The thing is, this works quite nice. The trust assumption is that essentially you just need one person from this operator set, which could be like 15 to 20 people, to be honest, for the bridge to stay secure, right? So it's much better assumption than if you would take, for example, a multisig, where you literally need the majority of these people to cooperate. And you know, if you have just 1/3 of them going offline, the funds are frozen,
Yep.
2/3 collude, funds can be stolen, right?
Yeah. A one-of-n trust assumption is way more favorable
Yes.
for the sort of things we want blockchains to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And especially for Bitcoiners.
Yeah.
I do think that like there is like a lot of like dormant capital on Bitcoin. And I think if Bitcoiners can borrow against it in like a trustless or trust minimized fashion, I think this could unlock a massive market.
Totally. Yeah, and you know, it seems like there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in the Bitcoin world with BitVM, Bitcoin rollups, stuff that you guys are building, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
I think it's like makes sense to also clarify that BitVM, while really good for wrapping Bitcoin, so means representing Bitcoin in these other chains, other side systems, it's not very user-friendly to use, right? The general problem there is that the way that these bridges are built is you can only bridge in and out in fixed increments, right? So imagine it like, you know, you're on Ethereum, you want to bridge to Starknet, which is a rollup, but now you kind of have to do it in 10 Ethereum increments, right? And then you can only go in 10 ETH increments through the canonical bridge and only go out in 10 ETH increments from the canonical bridge. This is not really something that people would use, you know, like having 10 ETH, it's like
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
Like 30K, right? You know,
Yeah.
maybe you just want to put a little bit
More
less
than the salary
that.
of most people in the world, right? Annually.
Exactly. So, and this is a big limitation of BitVM. And this is what we come to basically fix, because with our solution, you can go between layer one, which is in this case Bitcoin, and these Bitcoin rollups in a seamless way, and you don't have any additional trust assumptions, right? This is I think very important, because you don't necessarily, if you have a bridge that basically almost all the people will have to use to get to your chain, you want that bridge or like a swap solution to be really secure. Preferably no additional trust assumptions on top of what you already have. And since these L2 rollups already depend on the fact that Bitcoin stays secure and there is no 51% attack on Bitcoin, they can easily use our solution without layering any additional trust assumption, because we trust the same thing, right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I think maybe let me add to that, because in the end, what makes our solution as secure is that like in order to cheat Atomiq, you would need to cheat Bitcoin, and good luck capturing 51% of the hash rate, because that's an highly uneconomical behavior, because whatever you would need to spend to cheat Bitcoin is much, much, much higher in value than what you could actually steal from Atomiq.
Yeah, good point. So right now you're live enabling swaps between Bitcoin and Solana, as well as Bitcoin and Starknet. But I have some background info, and I know that you have a lot more planned on the roadmap. Could you two share a little bit about what's next for Atomiq and what people should maybe get excited about?
Something that is very close to our hearts is good UX, good UI. We have a feature planned that we call Swap Plus internally. It basically means that we can add an action towards like the swap. So you could go directly from like Bitcoin to wrap Bitcoin on Starknet, for example, and then you could deposit it automatically into a pool.
Okay.
And this, to the user, it seems like this is one swap, but in the end, like in the background, it is actually two. So we are abstracting away a lot of the complexity.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, with the bridging, you can bridge Bitcoin to the wrapped equivalent, but you can also bridge Bitcoin and have the user end up with a different asset on the chain. You can sort of like do the swap process to a different asset or plug it into DeFi.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And this is great, because in the end, you get Bitcoin security for the cross-chain swap. And in the end, cross-chain is, in my opinion, the most vulnerable part in all of DeFi. That's where like most of the hacks happen. Like, I mean, if we look at it, 4 billion in stolen assets, like it's absolutely insane. And you then get like Atomiq security for the cross-chain swap. And then once you're on Starknet or on any other chain, using a DEX there is not as vulnerable anymore.
Cool. So yeah, exciting stuff. So another thing that you guys have told me about is just using Bitcoin itself as a way to secure swaps from any chain to any other chain. Can you help us understand how that would work?
Sounds pretty crazy, right? So what we figured out, and what has been like the fact that was kind of accepted in the whole of interop space, was that the most secure way how you can do swaps between chains or message passing or whatever is through these so-called ZK light clients, right? So you are able to, let's say on Solana, prove Ethereum consensus, and then on Ethereum you can prove Solana consensus, and based on this you can have this like IBC bridge between these two chains, and then you can start passing messages around without any additional trustless time. Of course, we're kind of still so far from that, because as I said, it's kind of like on Ethereum you at least have a little bit of research going into this, and there's like stuff like Succinct, which actually is working on like producing these proofs for Ethereum. But good luck trying to do that with Solana. We are talking about a blockchain that has block time of 400 milliseconds, and in every 400 milliseconds there is a block with, thousands of signatures that you need to verify. And, it's gonna be very hard and very expensive to keep up with that if you wanted to just prove that, right? So what we instead said, okay, like let's kind of try to narrow down the scope. Let's narrow down to the scope to what we think people will usually want. I don't think that general message passing is like something that the end user is gonna use anyway. So I think most people actually what they wanna do is they have some assets on chain A and they wanna get other assets on chain B, right? And they probably wanna do some actions with that as well. That's where the swap plus comes in again, but let's talk about it later, right? So we focused on swaps. And then we said, okay, so we are quite far from this like ZK IBC thing. So what can we do? We realized that if we can have Bitcoin consensus verified on both chains, we can basically use Bitcoin as an atomic settlement layer for all these other chains, right?
Okay.
And how that basically works is that you kind of have two escrows, one on chain A funded by the user, another one on chain B funded by the market maker or the solver. And now to settle these both, so that means on chain A, the solver gets the asset, and on chain B, the user gets the asset that he wants on chain B, right? You lock both of these actions to a specially crafted Bitcoin transaction. And then if the Bitcoin transaction actually settles and is confirmed of Bitcoin, both of these sides settle atomically, right? And if that doesn't happen, then both of the sides get refunds, right?
So what we have done here basically is like we have married the convenience and the UX UI of validator or multisig based swaps with the security of atomic swaps, but minus atomic swaps drawbacks. Because with atomic swaps, you have the liveness requirement. So usually, especially if you swap from Bitcoin, you have 10, 20 minutes that it takes that you need to stay online, you need good Wi-Fi. If it's spotty, your swap doesn't go through. And we have eliminated this. As well as there is the free option problem. This is not so much a problem for the user, but for the LP or the market maker, because the market maker gives you as the user a 2-hour free option in which you can decide if you want to execute the swap or not. So far, the market maker did not have a chance to force you to pay out. And this is something that we have solved with Atomiq.
Very bullish. Relevant.
Very bullish indeed.
Very bullish. Yeah, it's like there's a lot for all parties involved to really like here. I think this sounds super, super cool.
So would it be cool if we use Bitcoin to actually solve this cross-chain problems of Ethereum, EVM, and by extension of all of crypto? That would be pretty cool, right?
I think so, yeah.
I agree.
Sylvie, Adam, it is always super fun chatting with you guys. For people who haven't seen this, we actually did a previous interview on one of the Align guest streams. I'm going to make sure to link that in the video as well, where we go into a lot more detail and we have about an hour-long conversation. So we'll add some links to the description, of course. Do you have any closing calls to actions or things you'd like people to take away from this?
Yeah, everyone who would like to try Atomiq, you can do so by going to atomiq.exchange. Atomiq with IQ, not IC, because you have a very high IQ if you're using Atomiq over another bridge.
And also follow us on Twitter or X. We are at Atomiq Labs, again with a Q, because if you use this, you have a high IQ.
All right. Well,
thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for coming. It's great to have Bitcoin folks at an Ethereum conference. I think there's a lot to learn from different ecosystems. I love collaborations. Bitcoin is obviously very important technology. I know a lot of Ethereum people are huge fans of Bitcoin, and it's where it all started. So if we can use Bitcoin to make everything in the sort of crypto world better, I'd say that's a win. And
definitely
look forward to next time.
Let's do it. Yeah.